I'm not the first person ever to say that Christians can come off as a little bit hateful. In fact, there's actually a catchy little phrase, no hate like Christian love.
There's no hate like Christian love. Oh, so do we live in a society where somebody walks in front of a car and you just watch it happen and their life literally ends? Oh, but as long as they're happy and comfortable. No, like, let's be for real. Real love is not watching somebody go down the path of destruction and you sit back and be like, oh, as long as they're happy, you know? The Word of God literally tells us, the Word of God, the Bible literally tells us it is better to openly rebuke and correct somebody when they're doing something wrong than hidden love.
Okay, first of all, just because that book says something doesn't mean that it's not hateful. Second, no two Christians interpret that book the same way. Yet so many of them think that they have to tell everybody they meet how to live their life based on their interpretation of this book. And third, it is very telling that instead of listening to people and asking what they mean when they say no hate like Christian love, he gets into defense mode immediately and talks about how he knows better than everybody else, so he can't be hateful because he knows the best way to live your life.
Hey, I love you so much that I'm going to tell you that what you may be doing might lead you down a path of destruction. Not, you look happy, I'm not going to judge him, let him believe in what he wants to believe in. No, correct and rebuke in the name of God, gently with righteousness.
When people say that there's no hate like Christian love, they aren't just talking about the way Christians treat them for how they behave or what they believe, but for the way Christians treat people for who they are or what they look like. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for liking and subscribing and commenting and all the other awesome stuff you do. We'll see if this one gets monetized. I have a feeling it won't. There's other ways to support the channel, though. There's merch down below. There's Patreon. You can just follow me on other social media. That really helps. Helps with getting sponsorships, things like that. If y'all follow me on all the other social media sites as well, that does help my specs. So, yeah, anything you can do to help would be awesome. Either way, thank you for watching, and I love all of you equally. When it comes to being accused of being hateful, Christians are very good at deflecting.
Popular argument right now against Christians is that we're not loving or accepting. And the whole irony of this love and acceptance movement,
all these people wanting love and acceptance, that whole movement,
is it's only love and acceptance if I believe what you believe. Here's what the world doesn't understand. I can love you while also disagreeing with the way that you're living your life. And that's not hating who you are, it's just disagreeing with actions that you make. It's hypocritical to say that I have to agree with how you're living your life when you don't agree with how I'm living mine. And if we can't love each other through disagreements, then we're really not looking to love each other, we're looking to control each other.
This is a classic tactic. Flip it on its head. Actually, it's you who is being hateful, and you're the one trying to control me by not letting me control you. There's a huge difference between somebody telling somebody that they are evil for being who they are and telling somebody to stop telling people that they are evil for being who they are. Walking around this world thinking that you have all the answers right away because your religion says you have all the answers is a terrible way to go through life, and you will never learn anything.
And then there'll be this judgment from the world where the Christians are just mean and intolerant and unloving and hateful, and you're like, you know what? I kind of feel like that's how you're treating me.
Oh, you poor thing.
Because when I say no to them, it's because I want to say yes to him, and I love them so much that I want them to be with me, and I want us to be with him.
So here Mark is talking about why he won't go to a gay wedding of a family member. And he quickly turned it around to make himself the victim. But the reality is that nobody is going to see that their grumpy uncle isn't attending their wedding and think, maybe I better not be gay no more.
When in the ceremony do we sing Over the Rainbow?
Well, you don't. You don't. This is a religious ceremony, so you wouldn't be singing that during the service.
Well, all right. No, I'm just asking.
Also, I sent him a message on Threads because I don't think he's being very consistent.
And there were many of these. One was from a lesbian woman. She says, quote, when I was about 14, I was walking down the street with my girlfriend holding hands. We stopped and sat down on a curb. We were having a discussion. I had a really tough upbringing. So 14-year-old girl, 8th or 9th grade, rough family, on a walk, holding hands with her girlfriend, sits on a curb. Some lady came around the corner in a Suburban, was screaming out of her window, "You're going to hell," cursing at us every profanity, got about 2 inches with us, tried to run us over with the Suburban, yelling the F word, "You're disgusting," and all these things, "You're going to hell." Okay? So having compassion means, okay, that was your experience. If the closest you got to a Christian was someone cussing at you while they're trying to run you over in their car, I think it's reasonable to come to the conclusion that you're not a big fan of Christians. Okay?
I mean, that's great that he's never tried to kill anybody with his car. Good for him. But how many people have attempted to harm themselves because of the words he said? How many people have died from the words that he said?
But that our words do have this power of life and death. That we can destroy people or we can encourage people.
If something has been working for thousands of years and it has been believed by God's people, like the fact that gender is binary, chosen by God at birth.
Just take a sip.
That marriage is for a man and a woman, that children are awesome, and that being a father is a dignity, and that providing for and protecting your family is an honor.
Just take a sip.
You're not going to get any of that from the progressive left.
Yeah, that coffee looks really good. You might want to take a sip.
The progressive left at this point, including the Democratic Party,
just have a sip,
has nothing to offer young men. As a result, young men have no interest in progressive ideas or Democratic candidates.
Drink the coffee.
And what we're seeing now, I've got a few statistics here.
Oh no? So just no coffee then?
So this behavior all the way up till 1970 in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, it would have been considered in that day as well as our own, the Bible on mental health. This behavior was listed as a mental illness during my lifetime. And it has gone from a mental illness to a civil right, and it has gone from those who don't love Christ advocating it to those who do claim to love Christ tolerating it.
You need to stop being such a cunt.
And the way it would work, how many of you are older men, and when the child was born, they'd say, it's a boy, or it's a, now they say, it'll determine in 3rd grade. And we used to wrap the baby in a blue blanket for a boy and a pink blanket for a girl. Now we put the baby in a rainbow blanket and, demons attack it, and we hope it works out.
But that our words do have this power of life and death. That we can destroy people or we can encourage people.
Hate isn't just trying to run somebody over with your car. These people will do anything but be introspective. Anything but reflect on their own words and actions. They come in with the assumption that they know best for everybody, try to tell people how to live their lives, act like they are the moral authority, and then play definition games and word games when they're called out.
And a same-sex marriage advocate called me a bigot, and I said, "What do you mean by bigotry?" And he said, "Fear and intolerance." I said, "That's not the definition of bigotry. The definition of bigotry is having a firm opinion on something without having done any research. You're prejudiced against a particular position or for a particular position." And I said, "Sir, if anyone is a bigot here, with all due respect, it's not me, it's you, because I hold this position. I've written an entire book on it, and you don't know why I hold the position."
That's not going to help you convince the other person that you're not hateful, but you are going to feel superior. And isn't that the main goal? Oh, no, I'm not a bigot. I did my research before I decided that you're an abomination. And so often people act like hate is about how you feel when you do something, or what your intentions were when you did something. And this is because they are using one definition of the word hate that says it's a feeling you have, while that's not the only definition of the word hate. And then they say that, hey, my actions don't fit this one definition, so it's not hate. Forgetting that words have multiple meanings and that words evolve over time. But when you spend so much time deflecting the accusations of being hateful and denying that you could be a bigot, that opens the door for other types of hatred to seep in, or at least to come to the surface.
Hate has no home here. Seems like a harmless message, but now in a major escalation following the Charlie Kirk assassination, a far-right pastor is calling on his critics to take down those signs. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rory Johnston.
And I'm Carrie Sharp. That pastor, Andrew Isker, is part of an effort to establish a Christian nationalist community here in Middle Tennessee. Now he's equating those hate has no home signs with a call for political violence.
At the same time, he's calling for vengeance against people he perceives to be his enemies.
How do you get to the point where a sign that says hate has no home here is seen as a threat against you? How do you get to that point and not think,
are we the baddies?
If you immediately recognize an anti-hate message to be about you, then yeah, you might be the problem.
Our chief investigative reporter, Phil Williams, has been monitoring this group that is planting roots in Jackson County, about 90 minutes northeast of Nashville. And Phil, this is really quite an escalation in the rhetoric.
It is, and you can understand. Andrew Isker is understandably horrified by the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But while he's calling for the left to tone down its rhetoric,
the rhetoric that hate is bad,
he doesn't appear to be ready to do the same.
Blood cries out from the ground for justice.
In this sermon posted online, far-right pastor Andrew Isker, who's leading an effort to establish a Christian nationalist community in Jackson County, Tennessee, expresses anger over the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and the response of some liberals, arguing that now is not the time for America, in the words of Jesus, to love your enemy.
This great evil must not be tolerated. It must be rooted out and eradicated.
And in a post in a Jackson County Facebook group, Isker compares himself to Kirk, saying his views are more or less the same as the slain activists, and claiming that as a result of what he calls irresponsible reporting, he has received multiple death threats.
This is some of the reporting he's talking about.
And here in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, Isker and Engel hope to make a new home in a place where most everybody looks like them and thinks like them.
So the question is there room for like-minded Christians and patriots in Tennessee? Yes, there's an imperative for like-minded Christians to gather and fight with us. Like, we need Christian nationalism in one state.
Or here, where he's talking about what he calls heritage Americans.
Christian nations on American soil. Yep, that's ours too. We'll take it. Right. That, like, restoring American identity, right? American, like, heritage American identity. That's good.
As Isker and Engel see it, the only people who have a legitimate right to a homeland here in the U.S. are those so-called heritage Americans, like the ones depicted in those Norman Rockwell images from the past.
Which is a phrase he uses a lot.
Yeah, at least 80,000 Somalis. And we have Ilhan Omar, who is the representative and has been, caught on tape saying her job is to, represent Somalia and to send money over to Somalia. That's her function as a U.S. Congresswoman.
Who recently addressed supporters in Minneapolis. She was speaking Somali. The topic was a controversial port deal that would give a breakaway region of northern Somalia access to the sea. An ambassador from that breakaway region posted a version of her comments online. The translation on the clip claimed that she said this: "The U.S. government will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia." Now, CNN translated her speech. Here's what she actually said. Quote, "The United States government would do what we tell them to do. We need to have confidence as Somali people. We live in this country. This is the country that we pay taxes in. This is the country where a girl was born from you all who is sitting in Congress." Republicans shared the first version and have all but ignored the second one, the accurate one.
And it's like, you're not an American, right? You identify yourself as a Somali, right? That's here in America. That's here to strip us bare and take all our stuff and send it over there, right? That's not an American in any sense whatsoever. So, like, when you think about, like, the counterexample of what Stephen's talking about, like, well, then who isn't? And, like, well, here you have a Muslim from Somalia who has not assimilated in any way at all, right? And is actively opposed to the interests of heritage Americans. Right.
Don't be racist.
What does he mean, though, by heritage Americans?
Mrs. Harris, Mrs. Emhoff, who is running for president, right? Neither of her parents are from America, right? She was born in California, but they both were on student visas, right? She doesn't have a connection to the history of this people. She's legitimately born. They were married.
Oh, she's legitimate? That was a legitimate birth? Oh, good. Who would have thought that at this point in time, we would still be deciding whether somebody was legitimate or not based on their parents' marital status?
But, right, if you think about the principle of what this is teaching, right, she is not connected to the past of this country whatsoever. It's a foreign past to her, right? She doesn't have ancestors that fought in the Civil War or ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War. Rod, yesterday is talking about, I was envious of him actually, about all of his ancestors from Jamestown and things like that. I'm like, man, he's way more American than me. But she makes me look like I was on, like I'm a Mayflower descendant.
It doesn't matter that Trump's ancestors on his dad's side came to America in the early 20th century and that his mom was not born in America but was born in Scotland. He is a heritage American, apparently, but Kamala isn't. I wonder what the difference is.
He's white.
He's white?
Right, and all of you too, right? It's insane, really, that this person who is without a future and without much of a past, at least here, is attaining the highest office in the land, is being installed as the president of the United States.
Remember when they were building that narrative so that if Trump lost, they could pretend it was stolen again?
Right. Day one, first thing I do, every one of those visas, every single one revoked. You're all going back. Right. And guess what? Now cheap homes for everybody. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're the world's leading brain surgeon. I guess we're going to have to train somebody else. You have to find Americans to do that.
Yeah.
Guess what? You can go do neurosurgery back in Mumbai.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad. Don't care. Do not care at all.
Grumbled Albie, quite racistly.
But then when you take all of these different groups and you jam them all together in one place and say, okay, you can have your way of life this way, you can have your way of life that way, and you're all going to live together, right? You can have your Juneteenth and you can have Ramadan and you can have this and that, right? Then all of those groups are going to have a group identity coalesce around their particular ethnic identities, and they're going to be at war with each other.
I don't know if there's a holiday more American than Juneteenth. Unlike Christmas, it started in America and is about an American event. Unlike Thanksgiving, it's based on something that actually happened. And unlike Columbus Day, it's about something that is worth celebrating. But I guess it's not a white holiday, so he doesn't think they should let people celebrate it. Yeah, that's right. He wants to decide what holidays they let people celebrate. I don't know, that sounds pretty un-American to me, but what do I know? I'm Canadian. Although my parents weren't born here, so maybe not. So yes, this man is explicitly a racist, white supremacist. But what about this part of the news report?
And in a post in a Jackson County Facebook group, Isker compares himself to Kirk, saying his views are more or less the same as the slain activist.
Now I know full well that people get awkward around death, especially when it was such a public murder. I know this full well because when I posted on Instagram about the irony of the person who said this dying by gun violence.
You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. Wow. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
Which, by the way, it was Jesus who said, all who pick up the sword will die by the sword. I do not condone what happened to Charlie Kirk. I am very much against gun violence. But I got this comment. Oof, that's an unfollow, irony or not. And this wasn't a random comment from some random person on the internet. This was a comment from somebody that I've known for 25 years. Somebody that I thought was a friend, or at least friendly. And some of you may say, yeah, but that was too soon. That was the day of. But the problem is that so many people were immediately jumping on the bandwagon to pretend that this man was a saint, when he wasn't at all. And I felt like people who he talked about, the people that he thought were second-class citizens, like my trans and gay family members and friends, or the black community, I felt like they didn't deserve for all these positive posts to go unchallenged. So I put up what I thought was a tame post about the irony of the situation. But the fact is that people always got upset when I talked about Charlie Kirk, even when he was alive. Like a few months before he died, when I put this in a video. His issues with Charlie Kirk isn't that he's a racist who is trying to destroy America.
In fact, you know, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
Okay, everybody, a lot of people are going to be saying happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday, and I'm on my way to work. Have a good day.
But because these guys don't call it harmful behavior, they focus on things like, does Jesus' blood really save people, or is it a symbol of his sacrifice? Meanwhile, the world around them is on fire. Now, I don't use Twitter or X or the Everything app anymore, but I was made aware of this post. Another believe it or not video, and he's accusing Charlie Kirk of being a racist. Not to mention not getting that homosexual intimacy is not allowed in certain religions. Believe it or not is based in Canada, and unfortunately more proof that they're too liberal for their own good. All right, lots to unpack there. So obviously I am aware that homosexual intimacy is not allowed in certain religions. I kind of talk about that a lot. My point is though that those religions are wrong, especially when they tell other people who aren't in that religion what to do. And in some ways, I do agree that Canada is too liberal. But that's only if you go by the definition of liberal that I use more often, as in liberal people are the middle of the road people, the people that are kind of okay with some change, more so after it happens, but won't really do anything to make things change. But I don't want to be the one playing the definition game, so I'll just assume he means liberal the way most conservatives mean liberal, and he's saying that Canada is too leftist. Which, no, it's not. We have the same type of people here that they have in the US. We have way too much racism like they have in the US. We have way too much homophobia and transphobia like they have in the US. But here's the thing. Yes, I think Charlie Kirk was a racist. But I don't think that racism is just saying that you hate a certain ethnic group, or racism is just saying that white people are better. I think he implied that a lot, but he didn't say it that I know of. Many very racist people think that they love everyone equally, but then they'll do things like get annoyed when their customer service rep has a certain accent, or they'll clutch their purse when they see a person of color walk by, or they think it's perfectly harmless to make a little racially charged joke if it's all in good fun.
Wow, you were very exotic looking. Was your dad a GI or?
Something can be racist no matter how you justify it in your head. The things Charlie Kirk said in his life, no matter how people want to justify it, was racist. He targeted black communities all the time without ever considering the history and outright denying systemic racism in the US, further creating that cultural divide and instigating more racism.
Where there's, for example, only half of murders in Chicago get solved.
Right, but are
that
they all black people, though?
Almost all of them, yeah. Like 80,
well,
80.
If they're not solved, how do we know that they're black people?
Well, because it's a black victim in a black neighborhood by a black gang. So it's like you can assume at a great approximation that in the west side of Chicago...
50% of the murders in Chicago that go unsolved are all black people.
Not all.
Dead
No, I said 85%. But we don't know who the perp is. But again, if you have a black victim at 2 a.m. in a black neighborhood, it's reasonable to say that it was a black-on-black crime. 90% of murders after 2 a.m. in Chicago are black-on-black crimes. I'm from Chicago.
Right. But when he sees black people that have good jobs and are well respected for their community, he says that the only reason that they are in that position is because of DEI or affirmative action.
No one really cares when it's HR managers. No one cared when it was, just kind of paper shufflers or even engineers. But now when it's like, wait, hold on a second. You're going to remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian.
I want my pilot to be like, hi, this is Chad. Maybe like a little bit of a Southern accent.
Chad Buckworth here. No, Chad. This is my 31,000th hour. I'm kind of bored, honestly.
Yeah, I could do this in my sleep.
But exactly. I want just like cookie cutter, like. Pilot. Yeah, this is so easy to me. I don't want LaQuisha James.
They have that like
up,
pilot voice,
and she's just like, "Hi, ladies and gentlemen, pray for me."
And the truth is, it's just this is a creation.
And so many people don't want to see this as racist or won't accept that as racist because they have those same thoughts and they don't think that they're racist. Because way too many people think that racism has to fit into this one box. Racism is yelling the N-word. Racism is burning a cross. Racism is refusing to rent property to non-white people. But they refuse to see that it can go so much deeper than that. There's a reason that the KKK and other white supremacist organizations have used DEI or affirmative action as a way to try to make people angry. And there is a reason why it works so well in times of financial unrest. They make you think that you're not struggling because your government is making terrible decisions or because of corporate greed. The reason you're struggling is because DEI makes it so that unqualified, non-white people get the job that you should have gotten.
Force is going to get promoted to lieutenant. It will be one of the minority officers because of affirmative action. Myself, not inclusive in that, even though I've been on the force for 15 years.
Hi, you're Mexican.
Well, on the pecking order, it goes coloreds, Mexicans, Irish.
It's saying that a non-white person couldn't possibly be as qualified as a white person, which, if you were to think about it for more than 2 seconds, you would realize why that is a white supremacist idea. It is literally saying that white people are the more qualified person in most cases. That is definitionally white supremacy. And since Christians have already done the work of downplaying hate and ignoring when people say something is hateful, of course they're going to celebrate a man like Charlie Kirk.
A packed auditorium at Dream City Church for Wednesday night service.
You just watched a really good man die today.
We're devastated and sad about the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk.
Charlie took his last breath on earth. He took his next breath in heaven.
A couple of us were actually there, and so we want to debrief what happened at the Charlie Kirk Memorial and then the spiritual effects that are rippling out in our nation as a result.
And of course, they're going to ignore all the voices saying that this man was hateful, that this man was racist. And again, I am not saying to celebrate political violence. I'm not saying to get out on the street and celebrate that this man died. But you can call it political violence for what it is while not making a saint of the person who died, especially someone who was so problematic.
But I am also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag. Now, does that mean he deserves to die? That's two totally different things.
And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
And of course, not all Christians were raising this man up.
Dr. Howard John Wesley is the senior pastor at Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria.
And I do not celebrate the killing of anyone.
Video of his Sunday sermon now going viral.
Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated.
Specifically, the part where he references conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
Hearing people with selective rage who are mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband.
He did not hold back.
Tell me I ought to have compassion.
The clip posted to social media ending like this.
How you die does not redeem how you lived.
They killed our ancestors over political violence. That was political violence right there. Knees on necks, that's political violence right there. Shooting you down for having some Skittles and a drink, that's political violence right there. Let's be clear, this ain't new. This ain't new. And I want them to be just as concerned about Kirk, and be just as concerned about Trayvon as they were about Kirk. And just as concerned about my brother that just got shot last night as they were about the brother that got shot a couple days ago. And while I'm on that, can I go a little farther? You and I need to be very careful. All of us need to be careful of the public positions that we take. Be very careful. Mr. Kirk said for years that sometimes there in schools, there has to be some lives sacrificed to protect the Second Amendment. I'm not making it up. Some lives have to be taken to protect the Second Amendment. Got to be careful of the positions you take, because they might just come back and take you. I am not applauding his death. That boy should not have died. His children got to be raised without a father. His wife has to deal with living without her husband. It should not have gone down like that. But the Bible says, if you live by the sword.
I'm concerned about all of these Negro preachers who've been, in fact, talking about that this man that was killed was the answer to Christ in the earth. Y'all ain't saying nothing. They having moments of silence in black churches all over the country over a man that was racist and a white supremacist. How dare you compare him to Martin Luther King? The only thing that Charlie Crist and Martin Luther King got in common is both of them was killed by a white man. After that, they got nothing else in common.
Here's the thing. If you're a white person, you're a white Christian, and you continue to say that someone or something isn't racist, but refuse to listen to the people affected by that person's comments, you refuse to listen to black people when they say, yeah, he was racist, you need to do a lot of soul searching. You need to get more introspective, and you need to start questioning your biases. But my question is, do Christians want unity among believers? Because if they do, they're going to have to start listening to their black neighbors. They're going to have to start listening to the people that they share this faith with.
On the Sunday after Charlie Kirk was martyred, look at what he said. If you can get this up on the screen, this quote. Did you guys see that photo already? Just look at the BLM thing. Like, that tells you all you need to know. He's wearing the rainbows, he's got the BLM. That tells you everything you need to know. Just because it's called a church doesn't mean it's a church of God. Okay, he's leading a church of Satan.
Satan believes that black people have the right to live? They really do like to make Satan look like the good guy, don't they? I'd also like to point out that the biggest Protestant denomination in America says that it's satanic for a woman to be a pastor. And there's a lot more in the Bible to back up that claim than to say that it's satanic to think that Black lives matter.
Just because it's got church in it does not mean it's a church of God. He's leading a church of Satan. So this is what he said the Sunday after the assassination. He said, I'm concerned by all these Negro preachers who've been talking about this man, Charlie, that was killed, as though he was the answer to Christ in this earth. Which, by the way, that's a straw man argument. Nobody's saying that. Nobody actually believes that Charlie was the answer to Christ in this earth.
I don't think it was a straw man. I think it was hyperbolic. Nobody said Charlie Kirk was Christ on earth, but many churches sure do imply it with their actions.
Everyone, 3, 2, 1.
You're just honoring him for speaking the truth. He said they're having moments of silence in black churches all over the country over a man that was a racist and a white supremacist. How dare you compare him to Martin Luther King? The only thing that Charlie Crist, he gets his name wrong, it's Charlie Kirk. The only thing that Charlie Crist and Martin Luther King got in common is both of them were killed by a white man.
Well, I think Charlie would take that as a compliment.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. As we note in the piece, Kirk has previously described Kirk as a hero and a civil rights icon. It's true. I used to be wrong. What inspired Kirk to shift his view on MLK? Why does Kirk think that MLK is a bad guy? When Kirk says that MLK says, quote, one good thing he didn't believe, what does he mean by that? Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right? Once a week we talk about why the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. I want your thoughts, and I wanted to make sure that, after that conversation, we talk about the positives, and then we also get into some of the other implications of this. We're a truth-seeking show, but I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday. He is not worthy of godlike status. In fact, I think it's really harmful. What do we have, guys? Rough Greens? Roughgreens.com. You've heard me talk about Rough Greens. Now it's literally helping thousands of dogs feel better and live longer, including my dog, Mr. Briggs. Frederick Douglass, Ben Carson, Thomas Sowell, and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. Period. End of story.
Really true. So I think there's that. And then here's the other reason, man, that I wanted to hit this is Christians, you got to watch out for this. What can happen is lost people or people who don't like the truth that a Christian stands for, they'll use labels as steering wheels. And what I mean is, like, somebody will accuse you of you're a bigot or you're hurtful or you're being racist or whatever it is. And hey, we don't want any of those things to actually be true.
You sure about that?
But they'll use the label as a steering wheel, and then a well-meaning but naive Christian will go, oh, well, then what do I got to do for you not to call me a bigot or a racist or a hurtful? And then it's a way that lost people can steer Christians into not saying things they don't like. And it's actually like, no, man, you just have to not care. You have to not care and just go, dude, I'm going to say what's true, and whatever happens, happens.
Josh here is becoming my number one pick for the most dangerous pastor that exists today. And part of that is because of ignorant statements like this that will only cause more harm than good. I get it. People on the internet can be a lot. And sometimes people jump to conclusions or misunderstand what you're saying, and it can be overwhelming. But if you have the attitude that you don't care if people call you a racist or bigoted, then you are just going to ignore everyone. Then it becomes impossible to ever take a look at yourself, to ever be introspective. They are taking the same approach to justify hate towards the LGBTQIA community, to justify and ignore their attitude when it comes to racial injustice.
Oh my God. Joshua was racist. That came out of nowhere. Did it?
A place free from darkness, and some are just natural jumpers. It's going to be a maze.
Maybe I just didn't want to believe it.
Why are so many Christians racist?
Sadly, there's some truth to this. There have been many in the past and some still in the present who are racist. We Christians need to...
It's mostly a thing of the past. Sure, there are a couple racists today, like his dad, but it's mostly gone.
...to do better. Why? Because the scriptures tell us that God values diversity. We see in Genesis, God makes male and female, and makes human beings to express themselves in the different ethnicities throughout the world. We see the value of diversity in the present. At Pentecost, people from all nations and ethnicities around the world heard the gospel because the church was going out to everybody. We also see the value of diversity in the future, where every tribe and nation and tongue will come together in heaven before the Lord. What Scripture says is that God has made many different ethnicities, but really there's only one race. That's the human race. So there's flat out no excuse for racism in the Christian community.
Okay, so that's all fine and good, but that's like a preschool talk about racism. That's the red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Ugh, red and yellow? Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think that's the preferred term. But as adults, racism is bad isn't going to cut it.
The impulse is, let's work against systemic racism. The irony is, systemic racism did not exist in the United States until it was codified into the systems by wokeism doctrine.
Makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Oh, that's true. There was no systemic racism with slavery. There was no systemic racism with the Jim Crow laws. There has been no systemic racism in a system that disproportionately imprisons black people. There has been no systemic racism in a history full of lynchings and genocide of indigenous people. It was the wokes. Those woke people, they brought the systemic racism with their DEI. This is what happens when you refuse to confront your own prejudice and live a life justifying hate and ignoring criticism. This is what happens when you refuse to acknowledge your own privilege. Of course, systemic racism didn't start with woke DEI. But that's what made him angry, because he thought it was going to affect white people like him, and he cannot allow that. So that's when racism started. And of course, some people are more in your face with their obvious racism.
Let's say that somebody was coming into our church and they're black, and would they be eligible for membership in our church? Yes, they of course they would. They'd be eligible for membership in our church.
Oh, okay, never mind. I guess this guy isn't racist.
But would they be permitted to participate in, embody, and practice what I would call black culture generally in our church? The answer is absolutely not.
I beg your pardon, are you ill?
Why? Because the characteristics that mark black culture as a generalization, in the same way Paul's talking about Cretans on Crete, they are evil, murderous, violent, bestial people. They steal, they kill, they destroy. They are sinful to the core.
Jesus Christ, man.
They have besetting sins that are like fatherlessness, sexual immorality. They molest children at a high rate.
What the fuck are you talking about?
All of any criminal statistic that you could look at, almost pretty much without exception, they excel at them. Black culture.
If you are watching this video and you are not seeing why what he is saying is so vile, what I want you to do is I want you to shut this video off and start walking towards the ocean. No matter where you are in the world, figure out where the closest ocean is, even if you are in the middle of your country, and start walking towards that ocean and continue walking until you are in a different continent.
We're building a town. We're building a community there.
Our News Channel 5 investigation has drawn directly from the words of Isker and his podcast co-host CJ Engel. Isker has downplayed the murders of 14-year-old Emmett Till, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, and he has declared that the very concept of racism was literally a creation of communists. He has repeatedly mocked members of the LGBTQ community, saying here that the answer is to put these people in jail.
This conversation probably has piqued a lot of interest for a lot of people. And
the podcasters have platformed guests known for spreading anti-Semitic notions, while Isker has dismissed anti-Semitism as a 20th century slur. And here in a podcast titled, Guys, You Gotta Get Over Hitler,
what's your big beef with the Nazis?
He agreed with far-right Christian pastor Joel Webbin that Jews should be treated as second-class citizens, in his words, as foster children.
There he is. You knew I couldn't do a video about white supremacy and Christianity without mentioning Joel freaking Webbin.
The richest black people on God's green earth are African Americans. If slavery never happened, then you would be in a grass hut. Yeah. Right? Well, we need reparations. Your reparations are that you get to live in America. You're welcome. You're welcome.
You get to have the Christian religion.
That's
live
right.
better than your ancestors.
The greatest moment in history for any brown or black country is the moment that the white man's ships arrive on your shore. Because he brings the gospel of Jesus Christ. He catechizes you and your children. He brings exports. He brings hospitals, medicine, life expansion.
If professional racist, if it was a job title, I think I'm getting pretty close to it. It's not something you find on LinkedIn. It's not an Indeed listing. But I mean, I get paid to sit down and say, hey, young men, you need to go out there and you need to join ICE and you need to deport 50 million people. So that's what I do. I really enjoy doing it.
If you are not being called a Nazi, then you are not pushing against the post-war consensus hard enough. You're not. If you're not being called a racist, then you probably at some level have given in to anti-white discrimination.
No, they're Nazis.
This is how they shield themselves. This is how they get other angry white men on their side. It's okay that people call you a Nazi. It's okay that people call you a racist. Wear it like a badge of honor. Don't even fight it anymore. In fact, something is wrong with you if you aren't called a racist.
If you're a Christian white parent who loves the Lord and loves your children, that you need to have the talk. The talk that we're referencing is the talk that takes your children according to their maturity at the proper time, the appropriate time, and says, there are certain parts of town that you cannot go. And there are certain people that you cannot be around.
Yep.
Right? If there's someone who is black in our church, and they've been in our church, and we know them, and they love the Lord Jesus Christ, great. We're not talking about that person, but we're talking about when you go into a crowd of people. If you go into a crowd of strangers, and they're white strangers, there's some danger. If they're black strangers, there is 30 times more danger. Them's the facts. And it is actually a failure of your parental duty. White parents, please hear me. If you teach your children growing up, if you lie to them and say, all people and all races of people in our country are the same. They are not. You are actually depriving your child of factual, truthful information that could save their life.
Trayvon Martin was murdered in a gated community by a white man. Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in a white neighborhood by white men. Most mass shootings are done by white men. Most serial killers are white men. But Joel Webbin is fringe, right? He doesn't represent all Christians. That's true, you're right. He doesn't, but he represents too many Christians. And he's granted a seat at the table way too often by well-known Christian leaders.
So you're talking about like every government in the world, and tell me if I'm wrong, because this is how I'm understanding it. Every government in the world should enforce laws that everyone has to rest on the Sabbath and everyone has to cast out idols, cannot practice idolatry in any fashion, and they have to put God first.
What you just said is my view, and not only do I think it should be done by every nation, I think it will be.
Now, at least Mike Winger disagreed with everything he said and has publicly called him out on other things since then. But I can't find him calling him out for his racism. Maybe he has, but I haven't been able to find it.
In this particular episode, I'm very privileged to have, for the first time, Vodi Bakum. Vodi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, and I agree. Any church that does not do Matthew 18, then I would say that is not a real church. It's not a true church, not as the Bible defines it.
Yep. Amen. I completely agree. And what
name of the book, Fight by Flight. Why Leaving Godless Places is Loving Godless Places. I love it already. The author, and he's a pastor, Joel Webbin, joins us here on the show. Joel, it is good to have you with us, brother. How are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an amazing, special guest for you. He's going to close all of us on postmillennialism right here on this stream. Without any further ado, Pastor Joel Webbin.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to talk to you. I saw your video. What I appreciated about you is you, sir, as a fellow Calvinist, was not afraid to come at the Pope.
The
John
Protestant
MacArthur.
Pope. Uh-huh.
Yes, you were not afraid.
Ruslan Katie is one of the most popular Christian YouTubers with a wide appeal for young evangelical Christians. And there he is singing his praises. Since I recorded this, since I've been editing this, Ruslan Katie did come out with a response to a horrible tweet that Joel Webbin recently released. So of course I had to take out my mic and record a little bit more.
There's a guest that I recently had on about a year and a half ago that I really enjoyed their takes on postmillennialism.
Well, he was already known to be racist a year and a half ago, so that's not an excuse.
Is this issue worth a Christian leaving their local church over? If their pastors are, is this something? And how would you know if your pastor, right? Because maybe he's just, maybe he's still learning, right? He's doing racial reconciliation nights with good intentions, and he's using a lot of pretty biblical language, but then every now and then, he recommends white fragility as a reading assignment or something, but he just doesn't know. At what point do you say, When do you pull the plug? When is it worth leaving a church?
And there has never been any denying just how sexist this man has been.
Has the same root. But along those lines, I was just wondering, do you have any assessment or thought, Jared, in regards to the fact that when I look biblically, I feel as though my assessment of the scripture, God places little emphasis, I don't want to say no emphasis, but he places little emphasis or less emphasis on distinctions with ethnicity, but a lot of emphasis on the distinction of gender, male, female. So it's like, and I remember when I was in chapter 1 and chapter 2, my big, preacher line was that it's not male and female roles he assigned them, but male and female natures he designed them.
Got a pretty wild take, in my opinion, but have no fear. We are going to be getting together in person. I believe next week. We're trying to figure out all the details to have an in-person conversation about this. Now,
well, first of all, no, you don't have to have him on your show to talk about his racist rant and to give him a platform. Just say, F you, racist, go away, racist.
Someone responded to him and asked him a question. And again, maybe this is triggering for some of you. It really shouldn't be. It's not triggering for me. I'm in this sort of situation. Someone asked him, Lizzie asked him, are you for or against interracial marriage? Are you for or against interracial marriage? And here is Joe Webbin's lengthy response. And this is someone that I've had on that in the middle of the conversation, I thought it was a very fruitful conversation, but then I found out some kind of interesting stuff towards the end of that conversation. He says, the average Christian woman on social media is...
Of course he's an ableist piece of shit as well.
So the opening is, because she asked him this question, the opening is... Now, did he need to say this as a pastor? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should be using that word, whether they're a pastor or not. I'd expect it more from a pastor that they would use that word, but yeah, nobody should use that word. So Joel Webbin is publicly saying he's against interracial marriage. Of course he is.
Ending my brief lecture on in how we think reasonably as a Christian and why women, even Christian women, are generally incapable of doing so. To say that something is not a sin but is not unnatural, generally speaking, I think is just an incoherent position. And that leads us to me going on, I think, to Joel Webbin's channel next week to have a conversation about this exact topic, right? And there's been a ton of people that responded to it. He says she slanders him. And my response was just quite simply, what happened to you?
Nothing happened to him. He's just always been a racist piece of garbage. It's just harder to deny it now because he's not using dog whistles anymore. He's saying the quiet part out loud now. People like Rustlin have defended people like Joel Webbin for years by saying that, oh, no, they're not racist. You just don't understand what they really mean. And then when it's revealed that, hey, oh no, this is just a racist person, you have to have a loving conversation with them on their show. No, you don't. Joel Webbin's always been racist. He's just gone full mask off. And us people over here who have been saying he's racist for a long time are not surprised. Racism is not called out nearly enough, and when it is, it's that cookie cutter, well, actually, racism is bad. Surprised you didn't know that. Without actually diving into what racism looks like. This is a very popular Christian influencer by the name of Bryce Crawford. He's like this young, cool guy who speaks to the youths.
Hey guys, good to see y'all. And Jesus Christ begins to reveal himself to me in that moment.
And recently he sat down with the leader of the Knights Party of the KKK. In a video he called Preaching the Gospel to the KKK. Great quote on the thumbnail, by the way, telling the KKK that they're racist. That's going to be hard for them to hear. So this is the start of the video where he sets a pattern of letting this KKK leader have the reins of the conversation.
All right, guys, we're here in Harrison, Arkansas right now. I'm here with Mr. Thomas Robb, the National Director, Grand Imperial Wizard of the Knights Party of the Ku Klux Klan. And you're here in Harrison. This is a Christian revival center. This is where you guys gather.
Also, it's a little weird that he called this guy's church a revival center. He won't use somebody's preferred pronouns, but a KKK church, he's comfortable calling a revival center.
You pastor the church out here, correct?
You're correct on most of that.
Okay, what What am I incorrect on?
Oh, first off, it's not imperial wizard. That's a term that hasn't been used in years. I'm just national director.
Okay.
And this is not a Klan church, because kind of what you implied. This is a church. The church and the Klan are totally separate organizations, separate mailing lists, separate bank accounts, separate everything.
Okay.
The Klan only requires you to be a professing Christian.
Okay.
Okay. We don't go into doctrines. We're not going to say, do you believe this, or you believe this, or you believe this, then you can join. If you're a professing Christian, then you can join the Klan.
Well, what I've heard about you is just what I've watched online, interviews, whether they've been prank interviews or normal interviews. And I think you're a very kind, gentle human. I don't think you're mean, aggressive. I don't think anything like that.
So this is the first time that he calls him a kind person, but definitely not the last time.
You're the Grand Wizard of the Knights Party of the KKK, and I love you. I think you're a kind, gentle human being, and I've had a God thank you for my kind, respectful conversation with Pastor Thomas Robb. And
being kind isn't about being soft-spoken and saying polite words. It's also the words that you say. Hate preachers used to be people like Steven Anderson.
No homos will ever be allowed on this church as long as I'm the pastor here.
Who, of course, is still out there doing his thing. But yelling like that doesn't get you invited to the Pentagon.
We know that God loves. But did you know that God also hates?
And this is the game that Christians have been playing for so long that they get so used to it. They tell people that, no, I don't hate you. You can tell by the fact that I'm using my gentle voice. I just want what's best for you.
There are people who call themselves Christians that hate gay people, but the Bible is in direct conflict with this. Scripture is clear that we are to hate the sin, but love the sinner, and to love those who hate us.
So by the time Bryce sits down with such a hateful person, he is not able to tell that one of the most hateful people on planet Earth is a vile, disgusting human being because he's soft-spoken. So he takes that as him being kind.
You're a very kind, gentle human. I don't think you're mean, aggressive. I don't think anything like that.
He doesn't think he's mean. He's built his whole life around hating black people. He doesn't shy away from that in any interview he's ever done. And in this video, he compares black people to all kinds of different animals, including cockroaches and ticks.
He created everything in the earth. Every creature, every little cockroach, he created everything. Why he created the way he did, I don't know. I'm not God's judge. He never asked for my advice. If I joke to somebody sometimes, they'll say, why did God create ticks? That's why I ask God. Why he created ticks. And he'll probably tell you none of your business.
Yeah, that was his response to why black people exist if God doesn't want them to be saved.
Oh, that's racist. Heaven is so racist.
But no, he's not mean. He's kind. He's a nice leader of the KKK. And then he puts in the work to humanize this man and make him seem relatable.
I feel like if you and I got breakfast food at Waffle House, I feel like you would enjoy it significantly more.
I've had breakfast food at Waffle House.
And you're just not a fan?
I'm not a fan of breakfast food.
All right, that's the interview. That's the interview. We can't be here anymore. That's it. It's over. Thanks so much.
But anyway, I like to. So I know you have.
In the 1960s, there was this show called Laugh-In, like a sketch comedy variety show. During the 1968 presidential race, Richard Nixon was down in the polls against Hubert Humphrey. And during this race, he surprised everybody by doing a quick appearance on Laugh-In.
Sock it to me.
And a lot of people say that moment made him seem more relatable and more down to earth and helped him win the presidency. That moment of humanization changed the course of history for America and for the world. And you can argue that a similar thing happened when Jimmy Fallon messed up Donald Trump's hair. Humanizing somebody who is so dangerous and can cause so much harm is so irresponsible. I know Bryce is young and naive. I know it seems harmless. They're just talking about Waffle House. But he's setting this man up as a relatable person. But the problem is that when you have the leader of one of the largest divisions of the Ku Klux Klan agree to sit down with you for an interview, you have a responsibility to your audience. And Bryce's audience is very young and very impressionable. And then he just gives over his platform of millions of people to this man to share his hateful beliefs.
I don't know. I know my thoughts about just the KKK in general.
Right.
And I've heard people say the same things to you. Oh, this is what the KKK is like, and you say it's different. So I'm honestly here just to kind of ask questions and share a little bit of my perspective and kind of pick your brain and things like that.
He just lets him talk and talk and talk and talk without interruption, without challenging him. He gets to spew out his hateful and vile rhetoric uncut to Bryce's young audience.
Our culture or our faith. And so we have a nation today that welcomes trans, welcomes sodomy, promotes pornography, which was a Jewish institution, which if you question me on that, I can show you why. Promote all kinds of values.
He's just nodding along here because he agrees with this part. And you should really be careful when you agree with that much of what the KKK is saying. He completely agrees with him about the Jews starting pornography. Fully agrees.
Make sure we don't surround ourselves with Jews.
Well, I think we should surround ourselves with all people.
They're founders of the pornography industry, right?
I mean, yes, they do. Yeah, they did start pornography. But that's claiming
the founders.
That's claiming that all Jews are bad people. That's like
he just fully agrees with this classic anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that the Jews started pornography to corrupt white American youth. It is a well-known racist conspiracy that has been debunked. People have always liked sex. It's kind of what has kept our species going. People have always liked seeing naked people. And people have a long history of blaming Jewish people for things. And here is Bryce just nodding and agreeing with the leader of the KKK on a racist, anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Tells us that now you and I, right, me being a white American from the state of Georgia, I have now been given the right to become a child of Abraham. I've been grafted into the branch, right? So now I have the right to be called a child of Abraham through faith in Jesus Christ, and so me as someone that's not ethnically Jewish.
Is that his accent, or did he just say ethically Jewish?
I am here to learn about ethnics.
Wow, that's great, man. I mean, it's ethics, but that's great.
Pretty sure it's ethnics.
And then he lets him talk for a while about why the Jewish people that we know today are counterfeit Jews and can't be trusted.
Proud of being white, you're going to be demonized and hated because there's more anti-white propaganda, hatred out there than so-called anti-Semitism.
But do you think that justifies you? Well, hold on. I don't want to say anything that I haven't heard you say yet. I know you said that you don't believe that black people are made in the image of God. Do you believe that Asian people are made in the image of God?
No challenge, because once again, Bryce is a conservative Christian in America, and he agrees with this man on a lot of things, that there is more discrimination against white people than any other group, which is, of course, not true. This is just something that happens whenever a group that has traditionally had more power starts to have to share some of that power, starts to see efforts for equality so other people can also have that power. They begin to see that as an attack on them. And to be fair, he does challenge him on a few things, but he was unprepared and had no idea what he was walking into.
I mean, I appreciate you sticking to your beliefs and sticking to your guns and explain how you feel. I guess for me, it's hard for me to sit. I guess one of the things I'm having a hard time with is sitting here and I'm referencing like a lot of scripture here of like, hey, here's what I think, and how do you reconcile the fact again in Romans, right? We're looking at Romans when he says people that have faith in him can be considered children of Abraham, have been grafted.
And suddenly, Albie wasn't racist anymore. So
we interjected a culture, a white Aryan culture, into the heartland of Africa. Okay, so certainly you can't compare what has been done in Africa. I don't think you can anyway, and what advancements they have made compared to advancement that Europeans have made in culture, education, in science, in health, in faith, in music. You can't find a comparison. There's no Beethovens coming out of Africa.
According to what you're saying, the way that you're comparing white people's achievements compared to black people's achievements is almost posing it that you're of greater moral value than they are.
Yeah.
Or that you're
Again, not true. But Bryce doesn't know how to fact check him, so he just agrees with him. He just agrees with another racist talking point. We've all heard about Atlantis, right? The lost city of Atlantis. Do you know why that myth got popular? Originally, it was just an allegory or a thought experiment by Plato, but eventually it became something else. As more and more of the world was discovered, evidence of past civilizations and amazing engineering was found all over the world. Many of these civilizations and many of these feats of the human mind were in places where white people had never been. So, instead of acknowledging that non-white people could be skilled engineers, could be capable of starting a great civilization, some people began to theorize that the lost city of Atlantis was real and was inhabited by the ancestors of the Aryan race, and that these people had floated around the world creating these things. Because that was easier for them to believe than non-white people could be good at things. Himmler and the Nazis were obsessed with this idea of Atlantis, and it was a driving force of the Holocaust. Africa has many big cities, lots of wealth, and many booming industries. And many of the struggles in Africa have been caused by white people and caused by imperialism. This is a talking point that racists like Tom Robb here or Joel Webbin love.
And on the whole, non-European people, much of the rest of the world, has been worshiping demons.
Mm-hmm.
European people have been building cathedrals. Non-European people have been building grass huts. And for those who are of non-European descent but live in the Western world, you are exceedingly blessed.
If you want to know what white supremacy looks like, this is what white supremacy looks like.
Why? Because I think good people, I think Joe Webbin meant well, and good people are now getting radicalized.
But it doesn't mean that I hate those people. I don't hate you. I don't hate this man here. I have no reason to hate him.
So now that you've seen the leader of the Knights Party of the KKK say that he doesn't hate minorities, maybe you can start to understand why we don't take it at face value when Christians say that they don't hate gay people or trans people.
And then there'll be this judgment from the world where the Christians are just mean and intolerant and unloving and hateful.
He's going to degrade people who are out there trying to put forth the good by having other people call those people names. You're a hater, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, whatever it is.
Because you could maybe understand now that hate is an action. Hate is something you do. It's not just a word. It's not just a feeling.
Yeah. What happened when you said that all lives matter?
Some people got upset, some people didn't.
Yeah.
But I would say the same thing I was saying about all lives matter to whether you were black, Asian, or Indian in 2020 is the same thing I'm saying to you. All lives matter. And I think all lives matter because all lives are of equal moral value in the eyes of God. But
oh, come on. All lives matter? People don't say all lives matter because they believe that all lives matter. They say all lives matter to silence black voices. It's like showing up to a funeral and saying, well, a lot of people die, so I don't know why you're doing this. It's a way to deflect what black people are saying. It's a way to ignore what black people are saying. It's a way to make people ignore the constant police violence against the Bryce's reaction to this clearly hateful man. After hearing him talk for an hour and a half, sharing his racist views.
I love you. I think you're a kind, gentle human being, and I've had a joy talking to you.
I think you mean well.
But it would be a complete injustice for me not to tell you that I really believe that you need to repent. I think that you're teaching a false doctrine that's leading many people astray, and I think it is very racial and not the heart of God to say that black people and Asian people and Indian people are of lesser moral value than white people.
To when a Christian says that they don't think that homosexuality is a sin.
I strongly disagree with this claim. That claim is extremely deceptive, and the issue nowadays with progressive Christianity.
Look, you're the Grand Wizard of the Knights Party of the KKK, and I love you. I think you're a kind, gentle human being.
I strongly disagree with this claim. That claim is extremely deceptive, and the issue nowadays with progressive Christianity is, as society progresses, so does certain doctrine and laws and things.
Yeah, that's just Christianity. Christianity has always been about negotiating with Scripture to keep up with society. That's why so many Christians claim that the Bible doesn't condone slavery. That's why so many Christians say that the Bible doesn't say that women can't be pastors. And that's why so many churches allow divorced people to get remarried. Because Christianity progresses with society. But he's angry because he was taught to hate gay people. He surrounds himself with people who hate gay people. He justifies his hate. He says it's not hate, but it is. So in his mind, the progressive church is due way more anger than the Ku Klux Klan. And I think that's way too true for far too many Christians. For far too many Christians, racism is not a deal breaker. White supremacy is not a deal breaker. Accepting gay people, yeah, that's a deal breaker. Protecting immigrants, that's a deal breaker. But if you're racist, I may not agree with that racism. Or I may make excuses for that racism. Evangelical Christians really need to reflect on who they are and who they want to be going forward. They really need to think about what they view as a deal breaker. Hey everybody, thank you so much for making it this far. If you know someone who may benefit from it, send it their way. As always, I love you all so very much.
Work, Sky Moon.